Hello there. You look lovely.
Thank you. You too.
I'm Anthony and
I'm Keren.
we met in the year 2000. I was a teacher of VortexHealing, came to teach VortexHealing in Israel as one of my very early on classes, and met Karen there. I started teaching in 1999, met Rick Weinman, the founder of VortexHealing, in 1996. That's when I started my journey with Merlin and VortexHealing. And after meeting Karen in Israel, well, it all took off. So you were already learning healing when I met you.
Yes.
You were part of a holistic college in Tel Aviv.
Yeah. So I started VortexHealing in 1999 with an Israeli teacher, which was teaching at the time.
She started teaching at the same time as I started teaching. The two of us were the first two teachers to start
I think
with
a bit after
Rick
you,
as the
but
founder.
in 1999, Emanuela Levine. And actually I knew her from a different college. She was part of Riedman College. It's a holistic healing college in Tel Aviv. I was on a 5-year program for learning all sorts of healing arts, which was all exciting and new for me. So from basically from 95 actually, until 2000, I was just exploring all sorts of different healing arts. To me, it was like a new world have opened. I've any course on the curriculum I just wanted to take. It was all food to a starving child. Once I knew that it existed, everything really interested me. So I learned reflexology and shiatsu and energetic healing with Emanuela. Healing through past lives, healing through dreams, kinesiology, radiology, did yoga, just a lot of different healing arts. And one day Manuela came to the room and said that she's learned a new healing art, VortexHealing, and there's only 2 teachers in the world teaching it, and she was offered to teach it. And that she was very teary and said she was going to leave the college to teach it full time. And like ducklings, her students followed her. And we took the foundational course, which was then called the basic VortexHealing training. And I took it with her. At the time, she couldn't teach beyond the basic training.
In the very beginning, the foundational training was the complete training. And then there was a second training added to it, a 5-day more advanced training. And I was teaching that one. So I came to Israel to teach the advanced training, and we met.
Yes. So that was kind of in May 2000. But personally, I'd love us to share with you and possibly inspire you to think about what brought us to VortexHealing or to healing at all. Because you can say we kind of don't fit the typical. Like, I wouldn't have considered myself at the time somebody who was on the path. When I first got into the whole thing of holistic healing, there was, or even spirituality. And, I kind of think that a lot of people would think, oh, that's for a niche of people. And I kind of think that it can be very inspiring. And I was saying to Anthony that I think also your story and how you got to VortexHealing or to healing at all is very inspiring and something to really give food for thought. So maybe you start first of your journey and how you got to healing at all, into VortexHealing.
The short version of that, I guess, would be I started working in 1989 as a software engineer. But it's a pretty stressful environment in the sort of a work environment. And then I found the meditation technique. Transcendental meditation was very popular. And I studied it. And meditation was very important and brought my awareness within. But also, I'd sometimes call it opening Pandora's box. Sort of Pandora's box opened, and I was always very curious about the workings of life, not just the workings of an engine of a car or something like that, but the workings of my own consciousness and my own life. So I would have been reading books like your hands can heal and chakras and that type of material. So I started learning healing arts. I found this one called Shen, emotion release therapy, which was great. It really kind of helped you cry. so instead of holding it all suppressed within, you could cry it out. I was a professional crier.
Oh,
in a very healthy
me
way.
too.
Yeah. And did all the Reiki type things, energetic healing, being introduced to your guides and angels, that type of material. Reading lots of books and studying the I Ching and Jyotish and Ayurvedic medicine and all that type of stuff. And then I met Rick, the founder of VortexHealing. Little notice board and work, this guy teaching this divine energy healing art, which sounded very interesting. And I rang up hoping that I would be allowed to go on this workshop, and thankfully I was.
In an IT company, not kind of the typical
it was sort of out of place.
advertisement.
It seemed out of place as an advertisement, yeah. So met Rick, and he was just starting to teach Vortex Healing. He had been working with healing arts for all of his life, and had written, before this time already, had written 2 books about it. But when Vortex Healing came to him, it was a new departure. It was something much deeper, something much more profound, much more magical, something more sort of a direct divine manifestation. And his job was to introduce me to it.
And other people.
Yeah, we had a nice group in the west of Ireland. That was 1996. I would have started, and then the class had a profound effect on me. When I finished my 5-day training, I could do the healing art of Vortex Healing, and I went home to where I lived. I almost was unrecognizable to myself in terms of walking in the door of the house and standing in the kitchen kind of going, I remember the guy who used to live here, but this guy coming back after just a 5-day training, I feel substantially changed. And my mother knew it, and she wasn't happy, because she felt, you've changed. And I said, yes, I changed for the best, for the positive, but she had a lot of fear mindset stuff, so she was afraid you're getting into the dark arts or something like that, this type of stuff. But I know, but I'm really here, I'm present, I'm embarked on this journey of healing. It's fascinating. So so I kept coming back to classes with Rick. Rick would come to his next workshop and he'd look up and there's Anthony again. So I would just keep repeating. And then more advanced material came in. So Rick created a second more advanced class. At some point I asked maybe I could teach this, because I felt from my own astrology and life path that maybe I should be doing more than just working as an engineer in this company, although I loved it. And my astrology said maybe yes, they would be in alignment, so I thought this maybe would be great, but Rick said no, it's not really. And then I met Amma. You may have heard of her, Mata Amritnandamai. She's sometimes called the Hugging Saint. She was in London, meeting people, and I went to meet her, and moment of meeting her, I was crying and felt very open and inspired. And at some point I asked her, help me make my life productive and of service to others. What's the maximum I can do, not only for my own growth but for others? And I remember having that prayer almost, in London. And not long afterwards, Rick called me and said, you could actually teach. And I said, oh, interesting, good. Merlin has called me.
Just to say as well that at the time only Rick was teaching this. This was totally new. So
and Rick didn't plan on creating a big, he just was following the path, step by step. One step is revealed as you go on, and this one step, the next step was just being revealed.
So it's not like the path was already laid. The path was being laid as you're walking.
Yeah, you're recognizing each step as you go along, and yeah, very good. So once Rick said, you could do it, I just took it and I said, okay, I am doing it. There was went through it in my normal psychological process and work and looking for redundancy and stuff, and finally just had to jump. So I jumped. I make up my own words. I jumped in the Christmas of 1998. I started my first class in 1999. Lovely group, still remember them all, still friends with them, a lot of them, in Galway. Went to Cork. It was one of our centres of healing at the time, to do the advanced training. And so I had sort of 1 year of teaching before I met you. I had a year and a half of teaching myself, foundational trainings and the advanced trainings, and then I went to Israel to teach the advanced training, because as you said, Emanuela was teaching the basic training but not the advanced one at that point. And yeah, the moment we saw you at the door, it was just, the magic just lighting up the next step. Like kind of going, oh, but who are you? If you're the next step, what's going to happen? But it was pure magic. Literally, it's the pure magic just happening in human form, right in front of your eyes. So by the end of that training, I was hanging around Israel for a little while. And after going back my plan was to go back to Ireland and then go to America to see Amma, who was on tour in America, doing an American tour. So I asked Karen, any chance of a lift to the airport? And then at the airport, we were sitting like this at the airport, and I sort of looked and I said, do you want to come with me? And yes, well, I think yes, you said yes, but I need to just kind of look at some planning around this, It's spontaneous. And funnily, your parents were living at the time in the same areas where I was going, but they had just come back to Israel. So you were thinking to yourself, how am I going to tell my parents that I'm about to go to where they're living in America in order to see this hugging saint with this guy from Ireland I've just met in a healing course? But you did it. Fair play. The courage, to do that.
Maybe stop there and I'll join my story up to that point.
Absolutely.
And then we can say together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because from then on, really our journey was together.
Yeah.
Of course.
So do that.
Yeah, so for me, I always say that my spiritual journey have started really unexpectedly. So I always have this vision of almost a glass of water, and all of a sudden a drop of oil just drops into the glass, and you kind of really go, what's that? Really, what is this? I had no clue, no idea that any of that, which I will go into what is that in a minute, what is that even, that it even existed, that possibility was even one of the options. It's very important point in my life, because until that point, let's start with the fact that I have a great family. We're 4 children. My parents are married. My mother just passed away, sadly, but at a very good age recently, and you would consider us a really great family in every way. It's just that I would say that, like any family, there was things up all the time.
Well, you feel like you're carrying the load, and you're carrying the load.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to do with it, if I'm being honest.
What do I do with this load?
Yeah, what do I do with this? And I remember many times, many times in my life, I felt like I had a lot of situations in my life. I've spoken about it once before. I was recording and sharing a little bit in Hebrew with my sister, and I remember it's really profound for me that for me I really felt overwhelmed continuously, because there was a lot of situations. I was a really good girl, and I really didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and yet there were situations where I felt things were happening that were not quite right, and I didn't have the guts to say it, and when I did say it, I would be basically told that I'm exaggerating, or I'm imagining, or I'm too sensitive, I'll grow out of it. And looking back at it today, I know that's not accurate. So I just didn't have the tools to deal with it. It's important to say that when you start becoming more aware and starting to acknowledge how you feel, there's people around you that have no interest in dealing with this. So one of the more fascinating things for me, I always felt that I need other people to go through the journey with me, or do work with me, or sort things with me. But because they didn't want to deal with this, and they kept kind of saying, "Oh, it's nothing, you're exaggerating," I always felt stuck. So I felt really trapped.
Or at least they assume there's nothing that can be done about this. This is just history. That's
I
what
don't
it
know
is.
about them. I just know how I felt, and I felt trapped. I felt I can't process it, and I can't sit with it. I can't sit with it because I'm overwhelmed, and everything is overflowing the whole time. I felt like a full bucket, and every little thing that would come as extra, I would just cry. You know, everything really touched me. Everything anybody would say to me would really kind of hurt my feelings and would trigger the tears. And I felt like that I really had no solution. So my brain would look. I remember actually like scanning in my brain, trying to find a solution, not being able to come up with a solution. Literally exhausting all possibilities. So when spirituality have come into my life, or let's say holistic healing or different healing arts, it was like, what's that? It's like a new option that never knew existed. So somebody's laying on the table for you something that was never, you know, that you never knew existed. So it was new, it was odd, it was exciting, it was intriguing, it was scary, it was all of these things. Really, that's what I felt. I felt a mixed bag of everything.
But you were drawn to it. Yeah.
I was really drawn to it.
Yeah.
And
something calls you.
Yeah, and once my heart set eyes on something like that, and it actually started before that, but really profoundly when I went to India. I went on a trip to India, and there, from talking to people and also experiencing spirituality, I think in India it's very much in the air. It's almost like part of the nature of the country is very spiritual. So when you're there, you kind of go, well, what's that? You know, how come people have so little and they can be so happy or so generous or so simple? Life felt so simple. And I felt very drawn to that simplicity. I just wanted a simple life. I just wanted to be happy. That's really down to it. I just wanted to be happy. And from there on, I just went in, looked actually, and realized that there was a couple, not many, of colleges. It was 1994 when I was looking, the end of 1994, so it was still in the beginning. It really was like the sprouts of new beginning of holistic healing in Israel. And
we're quite synchronized on our journey.
Yeah.
The timings of it.
Yeah, I was 21, and I was going for it. There's no changing my mind.
Your mom tried to convince you?
She did. And I caught it very quickly.
You caught her.
I caught it very quickly. Almost fell into going into university, which I planned. So for them, that was shocking. For my parents, it was different. It was like I had some options on the table of what I was going to study in university, and I changed my mind. No, I'm going for this college.
I fulfilled all my parents' expectations all the way through into working for many years, and then surprised them by changing to.
Yeah, so I actually didn't even start. I actually started before I didn't even
need to do that part.
Yeah, so then I went to Riedman College in Tel Aviv, studied all these amazing healing arts, really enjoyed it, you know, as I said, and it's still there today, and it's one of the great colleges. Sally Riedman is one of the pioneers of that in Israel, and she's still there, and she's done an amazing job. At the time, it was a very small college. So she knew everybody by name. It was very personal, and I was there really when it was like that. Yeah. So what actually, going back to what I said before, that when Emanuela came into the college to say that she was going to teach Vortex Healing and she was leaving, and we all migrated with her, something else happened to me. So for all the 5 years that I studied in Riedman, I learned a lot of different healing arts, and I was actually shocked at the amount of emotional baggage that I realized I was carrying. I did not know that. I had no awareness.
Yeah, I had a big surprise.
Now looking back, of course, I can tell you that. But at that time, I was really young, really happy, from a good family. Everything was going right. So what could be wrong, you know? But I realized that I was really loaded, really heavy with the weight of emotion, and couldn't actually go back to tell you what have created it. Nor did I know how to relieve myself from it. So I've tried everything. As I said, you know, amazing healing arts, reflexology and shiatsu, and healing through past lives and through dreams and everything. And actually what ended up happening is that every time I learned another healing art, something opened, but as it opened, it brought more stuff up. And then I was becoming more aware of it, and literally did not know what to do next.
That's
there
how you
was no
stopped smoking
technique.
as well, by the way, just in terms of
Not
you
yet.
said deepening awareness.
Not
yeah,
yet.
okay.
Not yet. And, you know, really did not know what to do with it. Okay, so now I know that I have a lot of rage, a lot of anger, a lot of grief,
Now what
a
do
lot of sadness, lots of things. But what do I do with it? So I relaxed as my reflexology was relaxing me. But that didn't take the load. I mean, I was relaxed and my feet felt lovely. And maybe my body was more open. But the baggage was still there, and I literally did not know what to do.
Yeah, before Vortex for me, when I was doing lots of other healing arts as well, and it would bring my awareness deeper, you know, I would still go back to work with the load. It just wasn't moving as quickly enough.
Yes. So basically, so I was feeling that I was aware of all the load, but another thing that I realized is that, so my awareness grew there, you know, for a start. So I knew that I have a load, which I didn't know I have, but I also noticed that I was missing something in all those healing arts that I learned. I learned Reiki as well. I learned, as I said, all those healing arts. But something was still looking. It's like a relationship, and it's not feeding a part of you that you're still looking, because the moment you feel full, you don't look for it anymore. So what happens is that something was still looking. And I didn't have the language to be able to say what it was that I was missing. Later, looking back, I can see that it was a certain maturity from the teachers on a spiritual level. So they were great in the art itself. They knew a lot about reflexology, a lot about a particular thing about the healing through dreams. So they knew a lot about how to catch your dream and write it down and analyze it even, maybe, or what does this mean, or past lives, for example, which later on fascinated me, because actually, you know, let's say in classes like Healing Through Past Lives, I found that many people really saw themselves as big things. Like, it's actually one of the things that I always share, because I think it's very important that people saw themselves as a chief of, you know, different clans, or different queens, or Cleopatra, or all, like, really big things. And I didn't get to see much or to feel much that I could put my finger. But when I did get glimpses, I got a glimpse of just somebody very ordinary, just living a life, let's say a very lonely life, and having died on the side of the road and nobody even noticed. And that feeling was very profound for me. But I didn't look at that. I looked at the fact that I'm nobody. Why are they somebody? They're great. They can see all these amazing lives. Where are my amazing lives? How come I'm not seeing that? It took me a long time, and that's where Vortex Healing really slotted in for me, is to really understand what karmic conditioning is and what really past lives is about. It's not about seeing who you were in your past life. You could be Cleopatra and you could be Keren Gorman, and you could feel the same way in terms of, let's say, isolation as Cleopatra, who is isolated in her room on her own with nobody really being close to her. And you can feel the same feeling as Keren in a room as a small little girl with a family full of people, but feeling just really lonely. So that feeling is what's more important than the actual life that you've had or the title. And that's what really has been answered when I came to Vortex Healing. So when I first came to Vortex Healing, it was all a little bit strange for me. There was a lot of concepts I didn't know. The talking about Merlin. Who the hell is Merlin? I was not into science fiction. I was not into the stories of Arthur and Merlin and all of that. Never was into fantasy stories, ever. I actually love really practical and very practical. I love like real life stories of people and this and that, and it felt to me like just a fantasy. But something in Vortex Healing just really triggered me. I did something, recognize something, and I didn't have the language of what it was, which became very clear as the years went by, which now is 23 years later. The main thing for me is that my awareness was very focused at this stage. 5 years into different healing arts have made me very aware of my issues. Very aware of my issues and very aware that there is very little I can do about them. And as I said, I felt really trapped. I just didn't find a solution how to unravel it. I was aware that I kept falling again and again and again into the same patterns of behavior, between relationships, to work, to money patterns, to family patterns, to relationship patterns with partners. I just kept seeing the same stories play out again and again. And, you know, you get really frustrated. I'm sure you are, because if you are aware of those patterns and you're not managing, you try everything under the sun to try and unravel them, it can get very frustrating. And then you keep searching. It's like you can't stop searching for something to help you to untie. It's like you feel like an elephant tied to a tree, and it's like you're really trying how with your clumsy hands, you know, with the big clumps of hands that elephants have. They don't have toes, they're like individual toes and fingers. How do you untie yourself from this tree? It's very hard. You try pulling and pushing and fighting with it and arguing with it and trying to uproot the tree. You're not managing. And I really realized that I need help. But I think something in my heart was calling, which is what I would consider a prayer. I did not connect in any way to a real kind of prayer. I'm not religious. I wouldn't do it until today in the traditional way that people would go and pray and just repeat the same words. It just doesn't work for me. For me, a prayer is a heart call for something. You really call out very sincerely in your heart, without words, without sound. Your heart is calling. And something in life really responded to me, and it really brought me into tears. I really remember spending a lot of time really like listening to songs or to things that would really touch me, and really calling for help. I didn't know who I'm calling to.
And he was
It's
Merlin
like-
answered.
The divine answered.
Yeah.
Life answered and brought to me slowly, unraveling my life and putting me on the spiritual path.
So you would say vortex healing really facilitates that process.
Vortex healing to me have really come as a breath of fresh air. It has done what it says on the tin. It really does go to the root of the issues and unravels them. We call them karma knots. All these technicalities we go into classes. It sounds very weird when you don't know about it, but it's no weirder than any marine scientist that will talk to you about what goes down underneath the ground and will start using all sorts of words and language that you are not familiar with it. When you swim on the surface of the sea, you are not aware of everything that goes on right at the bottom. But when somebody that understands it really starts bringing your awareness and you start diving a bit deeper into what goes on underneath, you get a real understanding of the bigger picture. That doesn't happen overnight. That builds over years. That deep understanding and appreciation for the fuller, bigger picture here.
The big picture.
Yeah, the big picture. That made a massive difference for me. And awakening. Vortex healing is a phenomena. A real phenomena.
Yeah, it really is a phenomenon.
A phenomena.
That keeps us engaged.
Yes. I never heard of another healing art that facilitates awakening, real awakening, in a group. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Now, that brings up a whole other level of complexity.
Get on the bus.
A whole other level of complexity,
Yeah.
which is basically concepts that we have of what does it mean to be awake. Because then you look at students and say, what? He's awake?
Yeah.
Part
Part of living life, part of living life, part of meeting life is to include this mechanism of awakening from an identity with what happens. Yeah. We don't want to get into technical detail about it, other than this is what it's about.
Yeah. Yeah, again, to me, awakening is really understanding the bigger picture, of really realizing who it is that you are from the bigger picture. When we are on the surface of the sea, we don't see the full picture, so we both enjoy, really enjoy, and sometimes you look around and you kind of say, yeah, I mean, people go to the sea, the surface on the surface on the top of on the surface of the sea, and they just enjoy it, and they come in and out every day and they love it.
But we did just watch My Octopus Teacher, and it's all about the guy that it's only when he dives down and starts living without self-protection and holding his breath at the bottom of the sea that he starts to really appreciate the marine life and what's actually going on, and the richness and the magic and the diversity of that you'd have no idea about by sitting on the side.
And the relationship and
So it's
the
all about that.
intimacy with life. And
So vortex healing
the
creates that type of
mind-blowing,
engagement.
the mind-blowing, your mind really does blow up when you understand the magic of life. This is what we mean when we talk about vortex healing and the magic. It's diving deep into the magic of life. It's really what...
Really appreciating how it functions, how you can work with it.
Yes. And it transforms your
And
life.
how to release the load. You just spent the last week doing laundry in the house, But it's a big job. We had to do a big spring cleaning type of a thing. But we have the knowledge, the time, the resources, the equipment in order to do that. It still takes a lot of effort, but that's what vortex healing is bringing for people. It's bringing
Yes.
you the framework, the knowledge, but more importantly, the tools. To process that load,
Yes.
to declutter.
And it makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
Massive difference.
If you can, we've been decluttering.
Yeah, our whole life.
Yeah.
And it
then
makes a
there's-
big difference.
And then it creates space for something new to come in, and that's what we
Yes.
see where we're living. is where we have created space, then there's a newness and a magic that's arising, that becomes more and more apparent as we stay on the journey.
Yes, awareness grows of the bigger picture. All of a sudden you care about things that you never cared about before.
Yeah.
You pay attention to little details. All of a sudden you have appreciation and you observe more because you have more room inside, so you have more room outside to observe. And when you observe, you see things you've never seen before. You realize, oh my God, I've been walking down those streets never realizing all these things. Or I've been walking down this field and never realized. And of course somebody who is aware of the field will say, oh, I've been doing that all my life. Okay, so you've been doing that all your life, which is great, but you might have not done it in a different area, which I was aware. So every person is different. The thing with awakening and healing is it broadens it in all of life, in everything you do.
And awakening allows you to meet people more authentically.
Yes.
So one example would be, I can talk about my mother, you can talk about yours if you'd like, but my mother is elderly, has dementia, but before she really went down deeper in dementia, and at the same time dementia is part of her spiritual journey of life, I told you this story where I really sat beside her and really met her, like soul to soul, spirit to spirit, beyond the story, beyond the projection, the baggage of the history and the weight. Because I worked hard on emptying all that out, we really met each other, really authentically and real, and she still knew who I was. And that was maybe a year ago, that particular event. And last week we went to visit her. She's gone deeper into the dementia. The first minute she walked in, you could really see her eyes are empty in a particular way. She's no clue who we are standing there. And then she sits down, and I go over to her, and I kneel down beside her, and I looked at her, and I say hi. And I'm just reaching to her consciousness, beyond her personality. And then she lit up. See it.
Yes.
She lights up with recognition. She goes, oh,
with presence.
She knows who I am.
She recognizes the presence, the essence.
And then I said, "Do you want a hug?" And she said, "Yes." And we embraced. And for your mum, because you talked about the load and all that sort of stuff, and your mum passed recently.
Yes. She did. Yeah. I won't go into it.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fine. That's
yeah.
Yeah. So, the process of releasing conditioning and awakening allows you to meet people more directly as who they are. Their spirit, their magic, their being, and to bring from them their gifts.
And to meet fresh.
Yeah.
Not meeting from the same passage that you always communicated with them all your life.
Which becomes very barren and empty. You're just sitting there and it's just
boring,
barren and empty and
boring. It's almost like you know what you're going to say. You know what he's going to answer you or she's going to answer you. I'm going to say that to them and they're going to answer. It's all pre-known, and that makes life really boring.
So what Vortex Healing introduces is that with the tools of Vortex Healing, by channeling divine energy, I can unravel that web of conditioning.
Yes.
You can unravel that web of conditioning. I like to use the example of Shakespeare, where it's as if my life and all of my lives are sort of the Shakespearean stories where I am Shakespeare as the author, but all of my life is taking place on that stage, and it's all a tragedy. You know what I mean? But awakening allows you to appreciate the art of that. And when I was in school back at the time, I would not appreciate. I only started to appreciate Shakespeare when we visited the Shakespeare Globe in London, and I actually got to see face to face more of the standing there with the open roof, the fact that nobody bathed and everybody smelled, that the best seats weren't in front looking out, that the best seats were back beside the stage looking forward because you were putting yourself on show. You weren't at the show, you were on show, the rich people. And it started to come alive for me. Poetry only became alive for me as I matured and became older and worked on releasing the weight of conditioning and awakening. Then, the beauty within poetry started to become alive. And now I can deal with my own children, and they're I was helping one of them to study and looking at the poem, and I could actually go through lines of poems and show the appreciation of it, whether with my weight of conditioning, none of that was actually there for me. So it opens you, holistic healing, releasing conditioning, and awakening. It opens you to the creative magic of life, so that you can get up in the morning and say, what can I do today that can I use the term spark joy?
Yes.
That sparks joy.
I've
stolen that term. So,
yeah. I think for today it will be great to finish, and we will come and inspire you in different ways when we have more to share with you. And you know, our journey has been for 23 years, and for you more.
our journey probably has been longer in the bigger
in Vortex
picture.
Healing.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
I understand.
for me 23 years, for you more, for you as a teacher, for me as a student, and as your wife. It's really magical, and it hasn't tired us out, because if it would, we wouldn't have been there. So if it would have exhausted the possibilities,
or like if the tank had gone empty, but it doesn't. It replenishes.
it replenishes with new things. So there's always something new. There's always something current, and yeah, we encourage you to explore, and hopefully we might have inspired you. Yeah.
Okay, love you, Billy.
Yeah.